Welcome back to Newsmaker Live. I'm Kendall Burton. My guest this evening, Elizabeth Lewis, the Director of the Division of Human Services and Family Affairs, as well as Nyla James, the Family Caseworker in that department. Before the break, we were talking about out-of-court settlements. That has been a perennial problem for you. Is it still an issue for you, and what steps are you taking to deal with it?
You will recall earlier in the year our DPP, who I think had it, with persons, with parents and mothers in particular, taking out of court settlement for their children, and figured that was it, that the court is not going to allow this anymore. The DPP coming out on this issue, it has brought the issue to the fore, and it's able to realize, get people to realize it is not something that we are going to tolerate. However, the practice still continues. Some parents figure that they need to take this money. Again, sometimes like they claim to assist the child with whether they claim it is counseling, whether it is if medical issues that the child may have.
But if you said earlier that most of the people at the lower end of the spectrum are the ones who fall victim, isn't there some degree of truth to that?
There is. And there is. They take the monies and they claim that it is really to help the victim. But what we want persons to understand and recognize is that when you do that, you are sending a very dangerous signal at two levels. One, with respect to the victim, in that somebody can do something to you and there is a cost. You know, they can be paid off, and so I really don't care about you much. It is the money, and so on. You are also saying to the perpetrator that you can have my child at a cost, and so usually when this happens, it may, and I'm not saying no, it may be a situation where like you said, there may be some truth that because I'm at the lower end of the spectrum, I have no money, I cannot pay. You may figure that you are doing something right at the end. What we want persons to consider is the long-term effects. Because what we have found and research has shown is that persons who recover the fastest from child sexual abuse are persons who have the support of significant persons in their life, like the parent, the mother, the father. And so they tell you that is how they're able to recover. And so once you are doing that, it says to the child, I do not really care much about you. It is really the money at the end of the day, the $2 bread or the 50 cents, the chicken, the barbecue chicken that I can buy by the road. And that is more important to me. And that in itself can have such a detrimental effect on the child and carry this child through this difficult time and affect this child for life. And then so we see the issue of persons in our workforce who are not productive, persons who have low tolerance, persons who are very impatient, persons who cannot have productive relationships, they are not able to relate to persons. All of these are implications, and that can happen when persons lose that level of trust from the parents who take on those behaviors.
Not a good reason for the private sector to get involved right there.
And that's what I said to you. There is a role for everybody. That's you cannot sit down here on DBS and say it's not my business, because you just may come across somebody, your child may engage with somebody as a worker, a colleague. There's somebody whom you find is not productive, who is the worst employee, and you just look into their background. You just sit down for a few minutes and you speak with them. What happened? You look back and you see that they were serious victims. They were victims of abuse, and this is how it is manifesting itself in their work ethic. And so you're right, the private sector also needs to see that as an issue for them. We have persons who complain every day that St. Lucians have poor work ethic. Yes, that we come to work late, or you know, that is. Can we now look back into what has happened to those individuals with the poor work ethic? Does it have anything to do with the level of abuse they may have suffered as a child? All of these are issues that we need to look at when we start to judge persons. And there is a role. There certainly is a role for everybody. It is a national issue, and we want persons to recognize that. It is not just a particular area or a particular agency that has to be doing it. So we cannot say it's a martial situation, or we cannot say it's a ancillary situation. It is really something that happens across the board. And persons migrate. We know persons move from one place to the other, and so we will come across those persons if we continue to ignore them, and it is not going to be very nice.
Moves were made a while back to have video evidence introduced to the court system to make it easier for victims to give testimony or give statements without having to face the perpetrators of the crime. What kind of headway has been made in that direction?
Oh, this is one of, I think, the flagships for KNo within the OACS, as we are the only ones within the OACS with that video link where the children can go into a safe place, away from most times the court where the perpetrator is there staring them in the face, and are able to give the evidence in this place away from the perpetrator, like we say, in a safe environment. And this is another thing, and thank you for bringing it up, because we want persons to know that we have those things in place for our children. So when we say we do not want to take the matter to court, because our child will be in the court facing the perpetrator and we are further traumatizing the child, this is one of the things that we have put in place for children. And it is working quite well. We see quite a few children who come in. And apart from that, we have the family court that has taken on the role of preparing the child for court. So a child who has to go into court meets with a trained social worker who's going to prepare them. So it's not give evidence, because you know this is not correct, but it's to allow them to familiarize themselves with the court, what is going to happen, so that they understand the procedure. So it's not something that is foreign to them when they come across. And so we do the family court does a court preparation of the child. This is something that is happening, and we want persons to know that, and the family gets support. And then this child goes into this place where he or she can give the evidence, and the perpetrator is nowhere close to this child.
That reminds me of a question I wanted to ask earlier. In the initial interview process, where the police are brought in, is there a special line of questioning that police are trained to ask? A degree of sensitivity that's required? Does the Human Services Department provide that training for the police?
At this time, no. We do not do that level of training with the police, but we certainly recognize there is need for that, because when you're dealing with a child victim, it is very different to an adult. The issues, as Nyla raised, that the children are afraid to speak. You must be able to use a particular technique to get a child to speak. The child must feel some level of comfort.
So who does that questioning?
So the questioning is done by the police officer.
In the presence of a social worker or professional?
Responsible adult?
If it's in the case, yes, where the child is going to give the evidence. So you have the police officer, either a social worker, as Nyla is saying, or another responsible adult who is going to be there. We work very closely with the vulnerable persons unit, and they are quite sensitive, I must say. Very sensitive to those issues. And so in cases where the children are not able to speak, then they are sent to us to see if we can get them to be a little more relaxed. It is not to give information. We don't engage too much to interfere with the evidence. But it's to help the child to be relaxed, to give the story. Because we do recognize you become a victim, and there you are, if it is a male, and now you have to give your story to another male. That in itself is another issue that complicates. But I must admit that the vulnerable persons team within the KNo police force are very sensitive to that, and they work along with us.
Are you happy with the way the media covers these sort of stories?
No. No.
Let me allow Nyla to start.
I'm not. Personally, I feel like the media, they don't do enough background check. They don't investigate the allegations made against the division or any reports that are made. And I think more could be done, because most times everybody wants their own way, and it cannot always be done the way the client or the victim wants it to be done.
Okay, we have a call. Good evening, you're on the air. Hello. Okay, we seem to have lost that call.
Yeah, but let me follow on from Nyla, because one of the things I think sometimes the media does not recognize is that there is a victim there, and most times the victim is a child. And yes, it may be the parent speaking out there and giving the story, but we must always remember there is a child involved, and that we must not at any point engage in any activity that is going to re-traumatize the child or make the child a further victim. In some cases, when we go out there and we give the story and the media gets the story and runs it, like I said to some parents recently, St. Lucia is a very small society. And yes, Nyla may be the one who's speaking out as a parent, but you may have never seen Nyla's child, but you know Nyla. All you need to do is look out for Nyla, and then you are going to see the child. And the child is going to be exposed to a lot more abuse, whether it is within the school, whether it is persons on the street who, you know, will taunt and say things that are really not nice. And so we want the media to be very sensitive to that. Recognize that the child has rights, and that we have to protect the child at all times. Notwithstanding that we want to get the story out there, we have to do it in a responsible way, that the child is not further traumatized or victimized in those cases.
Okay, we have another call. Good evening, you're on the air.
Good evening.
Hi.
Good evening.
I have a question that is troubling my mind. As a parent, I have 2 young boys growing up, and they are very much in disagreement, always in a fight, always one have to have a knife and thing, and you're calling for assistance and you're not getting no assistance. What do you think at this time the parent should do? I just want to know if there's anything in place for that, where you can go and call and get some police or somebody, because you're not supposed to be, they talk about beating is not right now. So even sometimes the children even threaten the parents that they will call the police for them. So as a parent, what can you do with those 2 kids? Thank you.
Okay, thanks for calling.
I would say, first of all, she shouldn't wait for when the incident occurs. Probably there's more assistance than these 2 boys might need. It might be, I mean, maybe anger management, I'm just saying, probably behavioral issues. So let's not wait until the outburst. Seek some other types of help for them, maybe from the division itself, to get some assistance for them, and not wait for when there's the loud outburst to try to get the police to come in, because sometimes the police might not be available, and then what? So she could get additional help for the boys that will probably assist with the situation.
Okay. We have another call. Good evening. Okay. Yeah, but what she's asking, and I guess you already mentioned that you're under a lot of stress, but apart from the Division of Human Services, what other avenues does she have in terms of getting the services or accessing the services that you mentioned, the anger management and the counseling and that sort of thing, ahead of the outbursts?
Well, we always encourage people to come into Human Services, and if it's a situation that we are not able to deal with, then we make the necessary referrals. So I know the family court runs some anger management classes. Is it that it's something that is appropriate for these boys? Exactly. And so come into Human Services, or go to one of the social agencies, and they can guide you and refer you to where you can get the help. There is a court diversion program that the probation department runs. Is it that the boys need to go there to get some help? But as Nyla said, let us not wait till it escalates to the point that we have to bring the police in. So once we recognize the behaviors, we need to come and find a social agency. There's crisis center, there's gender relation. You can speak to them, and they can guide you in the correct place to go.
Okay, we were talking earlier about the media, some of the issues that you have with them. What role now can the media play in spreading the message and being a part of this campaign? I'm making a more positive, I'm making a more positive contribution.
And this is what we want to hear. This is certainly what we want to hear. This is one of the reasons we are here tonight. Because we certainly need the partnership of the media. This is something that I've always embraced, and that is the media, because to get the message out, we know the media plays a significant role in getting it out. And so we want the media to start to get familiar with the issues. What is Break the Silence all about? What is it, that I can do to help guide the parent and the child? It is not just to get the story out and create some level of sensationalism and then we hear it on all the talk shows and all over the place. But we need to be able to guide the parent and guide the child into where to go for help, what to do, and because at the end of the day, I'm hoping this is what we want, to get help for the parent and the child. And so it is just to familiarize yourself, know the social agencies and say, okay, this is where you go for this, or contact this person. Have numbers, have addresses, have places that you can send them to.
Okay, we have a call. Good evening. Are you on the air? Okay, we seem to have lost that call. But I think maybe it's an indictment on your department too, that people are not informed or not aware of what the avenues are, so they resort to the media in the hope that the media, or having the issue exposed on the media, the relevant authorities will come forward and help them.
And it's interesting because one of the things, and unfortunately I think it's something we have developed in St. Lucia, that we only respond when persons go to the media and then we create the big hype. But it is, and it's something we have to look into, that one person's coming, we provide them with the level of service that they need. However, we recognize that persons are not always happy with the action that we take. They want a particular individual to respond to them, and if it is not Mrs. Lewis, they do not want to see Nyla. They want to ensure that they see Mrs. Lewis because she's a director, and this cannot always work like that, because we have family caseworkers, we have caseworkers in various areas. We have persons who work in ancillary, persons who work in baboon, persons who work in canneries. And so if a situation comes up, then this is the first point, the first person who is going to deal with your case. And if you're not happy, then of course you are duty bound to seek redress. And so you can move up high in the scale. But in some cases, we figure it has to be the director to deal with it. Yes,
Okay, and we have a call. We take that call and we can come back to that. Hi, good evening. You're on the air.
Yeah. Hello, I'm a child and I'm calling. And I think that sometimes parents need to vent their anger, and so they take it out on us. Thank you.
All right, and thank you for calling.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for calling. And this is a very good point. Parents figure they have to vent, and who better to vent than on this
child?
This child who cannot hit back, who cannot respond. And yes, my dear, as a child, a lot of persons will say to you, I went through it, and persons, but it is not right. It is certainly not right, and we're asking parents, find somewhere else, get a punching bag, get something that is, has no feelings. But certainly it is not right to vent by lashing out on your child. And sometimes it is not the child that they are angry with. They're angry with the offending parent. The father has not paid the maintenance, or the father has left them, or the mother, and it is the poor child now who gets all the blows, who are called all the names. You look like your father, your head is as big as your father, you're angry, you'll be nothing like your father. And these are the sort of things they say to the children. And it is certainly not right. It is something that we have to stop engaging in.
I want to give you the opportunity to complete your thought before the call. You were talking about the issue of people coming to the department wanting to go straight to the head.
Yeah, and this is something, like I said, the kind of work that we do, we recognize that most times we have to live more than one party, and everybody has different views on what it is. This one say I want this child, this one say I want this child for 2 weekends. And we have to do a lot of mediation, and it may not always end up, and somebody is not going to be happy with the outcome. And so it is where sometimes is where they feel that they are going to now go to the media and create this.
Because you become the new enemy.
And the new enemy number one. And as I always want also the media to recognize a story has more than one side. Most times we hear a side of this person who figures quite vocal. And for us within the government service And for us in the government service in particular, we have policies that we must follow, in that I can't just go out there and speak out and lash out. And so most times we are the sitting ducks. The people go out there and they make all sorts of accusations, and we are not able to come out and defend because we have to protect, in most cases, the child.
Okay, we have another call. Let's take that call, our final call for the evening. Good evening, caller, you're on the air. Hello? Okay, you can go ahead.
Yes, so it is a situation that we have, but I again, I want to reiterate the point that we have to always recognize that there's more than one side to a story. Usually when we hear, we have to ask the question, is that really the case? What else, what are the other issues surrounding this? What made, why does that decision made, and so on? And we have to have an open mind as a mature group of persons, as a mature nation, that we do not take things as we hear it the very first time.
Okay, let's wrap up. How do we avoid abuse altogether?
Avoid.
Prevent it.
Well, there are preventative methods that I could say, I mean, with parents, mothers, and fathers. I mean, being careful with monitor the situation, watching how your child behaves. Because sometimes, I mean, you cannot just leave your child in the house, especially knowing that then the community that you live in. So we need to monitor the situation, monitor our children, be careful how we dress our children, because I find lately we think that our little girls are as grown as we are. And there are sick men who, even though they're children, but they're dressed as adults, they would try to treat them as adults. So we need to be careful how we dress our children, the way we treat them. If we treat them like grown women and grown men, eventually they would try to behave that way, and then the perpetrators would try to prey on them. So these are just a few, in my opinion, preventative methods that could be taken when it comes to children. Oh, and also making sure that if you see the signs and symptoms of sexual abuse, that you report it as soon as possible.
Yes, certainly. I always stress education. We have to educate. We have to be educated on the issue, and we have to impart that knowledge and that information. From the school level, we have to start educating our children. What to look out for, how to behave, and so on. From the parents' part, and as a child, it's very clear, sometimes we have frustrations. We have to be very mindful that as we release that steam, that we do not do it on the children. We do not do it in the presence of the children. Because most times they are not the one that cause it. I mean, when we cannot purchase milk, it is not because of the child that you cannot buy yourself a can of milk. Or you don't have bread to feed the child. It is really not the child's fault. So why pass this frustration onto the child? And so we have to be mindful that we're able to control our emotions, control our anger, and always remember that when we're dealing with children, we're dealing with human beings with rights. Children have rights, they have feelings, and that they too will grow up to be adults. And what we do not want at all is for them to come back and attack us, as some of us claim that is happening at this time.
Okay. Now, beyond this campaign, what is your department doing to keep this issue at the forefront of solutions' minds? Because we have a short attention span.
And this is what we recognize, and so we are going to give it to them in small doses. So we had this launch that as you said yesterday, and the whole plan is to continue this campaign. So certainly you will see a lot more of it happening next year as the year comes in. We are going to go out there into the schools because we recognize our children are so very vulnerable. And so we have to go out there and educate them and ensure that they know what are some of the things that they need to do. So we go out into the schools, we'll be going out into the communities. We'll ensure that our adults themselves understand the implications and consequences of their actions and how it can affect us in the long run. Persons must, and I want to repeat that point, see this as a national issue. It is not a one agency issue. It is not a police issue. And we speak of crime, but crime really did not come about. When we see those persons committing the crime today, they did not just were born as criminals. And so it is always important for us to go back into the genesis. What happened? What led to this current action? And it's the same thing with child abuse. When we take certain actions, we have to always think of what the repercussions are going to be, and be very, very mindful. So the campaign Break the Silence, End Child Sexual Abuse is certainly going to be continued. Human Services is not going to let off, because we see the implications, we see the consequences. We have to deal with it every single day, and we cannot allow our children to be abused in that way. And I'm sure Nyla and you, we do not want to be the elderly and have to hide in our homes, and have these very same children who we're now abusing out there running helter-skelter and creating a serious problem for us. So we have to look at it in that sense, in that way, and provide that kind of support. So yes, the campaign is going to be continued. It certainly will be continued.
You want to add to that, Nyla? Parting words?
Well, the campaign, I think it's a good initiative, and we really want the teachers, parents, all medical personnel to come on board with us, because we need their assistance. It's not just the division's responsibility, but it's also the responsibility of parents and, you know, everybody with authority to help us and assist us in nipping this from the bud before it gets too late.
Okay, well said. Thank you very much, Mrs. Lewis. Thank you, Nyla James, for being our guest this evening. And thank you for watching. Thank you for calling. Join us next week for another Newsmaker Live with me, Kendall Burton. I'll see you then. Good night.